Hey everyone, my name is Yarrow and you're listening to the DIY Small Business Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me after a little break, which was quite spontaneous. I took last week off to rest and retreat and process a little bit. I don't feel like I've done anything near enough processing for 2020. I just read a book and had a nap and scratched the surface a bit, but it still felt good and important. And even though I felt a bit restless and anxious about moving out of lockdown, it was needed and I want more rest. So I don't know, just putting that out there in the universe. I'm excited about today's conversation. I spoke to the wonderful Kate Litterer about breaking free from productivity culture. And I really hope that if you're sitting with these questions as well about what is good enough, what does rest mean, where next, that you are also getting something out of this conversation. I also really want to say that I'm feeling so honored and privileged and lucky to be surrounded by other small businesses right now who are being so brave and so courageous and flexible and creative, and also really honoring their need to rest and have time to adjust as well. It's just, it feels really good that we're here for each other, and I'm grateful for you listening as well. We spoke about many different things, such as living with chronic pain and finding softness around limitations. We also spoke about the harmful expectations and the scarcity mindset we often find in academia, about valuing invisible labor, our journey with pricing and accessibility, and many other things. So I really hope that you'll get something out of this. Kate also emailed me a few weeks back. So we recorded this in April. That is important to say. I feel like things are moving so fast at the moment, and we recorded this kind of really in the first wave of shock, I would say. And a little while back, Kate asked me to add a little bit to what she said, which I really appreciate and will read to you in her own voice. Words. I can't make her voice, I'm sorry. In her own words, she said, "I've been reflecting on what it means to rest, to honor one's personal resources, to be productive, and how access to these acts is influenced by structural racism. I'm witnessing many of my white friends and colleagues, myself included, finally showing up to protest in solidarity with BIPOC folks in new ways after a loud social press demanded that we address our complicity in the white supremacy. Many people are exhausted, burned out, and overwhelmed, things that previously would have prescribed prioritization or time management to address. Yet that recommendation does not acknowledge the ways in which BIPOC folks' labor has been systematically under and unvalued for centuries. See the hashtag Black in the Ivory Tower for an example of this in contemporary academia. I hope that as you listen to our episode that you join me in reimagining the tools and suggestions that I share in an effort to dismantle white supremacy through how we conceive of our and others' labors to care for ourselves and one another and to prioritize the voices of BIPOC folks." Yes, thank you, Kate. I want to second that, and I'm grateful that we added that to the episode. I don't have many announcements to make myself before I let you go and listen to this. I am running a free summer series of workshops. The first one has been on pricing and accessibility and economic justice, which was such great fun, amazing conversations have been had. And you can get the recording. And then the next one is about building community media for change and also for businesses, which obviously can be the same thing. But I'm going to talk about podcasting, writing, blogging, zine making, things that are kind of happening outside of social media and the confines of those kinds of platforms, which can be great, but also complicated stuff. And I want to share tools to share our work more widely and really build solidarity and community. And then in August, I'm running a workshop on no bullshit money mindset work, because obviously, this year is bringing up a lot of stuff. It's really difficult for many of us, this deep uncertainty. There's also a lot of bullshit in the money mindset industry, let's be real. And I think there are really valuable, useful things that we can do for ourselves and each other to look at our relationship with money and to try to set ourselves up in a way that is as resilient as we can be under capitalism. So if you want to join those conversations or watch the replays, please sign up. I'll link to that in the show notes. And I would love to have you. I'm also open to mentoring clients, and later in the summer I could do a web design project or two. If you're interested, just reach out and we'll have a chat. Okay, I'll let you listen now. Thank you so much, and thank you so much also to Kate. Hey everyone! This is my second start, and I just had a little giggle because I said, oh, this has really not happened in a long time, and I'm quite pleased. But anyway, I am really excited for my guest today. I'm speaking to Kate Litterer, who's a productivity coach and runs a project called Attending Year, and has just so much to say about the beauty and value of going slow and really thinking about how we want to spend our time and energy in our days and how we want to structure the way that we show up and work. So, as you know, those are things that are very close to my heart, and I'm always thinking about really making things easier. Like, that's super, super important to me. So, yeah, I'm just really excited to speak to Kate and to see what we can chat about and tangle and untangle together. Kate, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to this. And thank you for that beautiful intro.
I would love to start by asking you where you are in the world right now, what nature is like around you.
Cool. So I'm in Boston, Massachusetts, a little outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and spring is starting. And obviously a lot of people are in quarantine, so it's a little quiet outside, but I'm very, very excited that we've set up a bird feeder and it's right outside the kitchen so the cats can watch it. So as the blooms are starting on the rose bushes here, there's also a lot of birds. And I've also started feeding the squirrels so that they'll not eat from the bird feeder. So that's my main spring excitement right now.
That's so beautiful. I hear from people at the moment all the time, little things like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I put these, I planted this seed. So I'm so glad I have a garden now. It's really kind of, coming back to the little things, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. My partner and I moved into this apartment in September. So this is our first spring. And I'm also very excited about the rose bushes that were already here when we moved in. So seeing all the flowers starting to bloom is very cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine. Can you tell us a little bit more about your work and how you came to do it?
Yes. So my work, I am a productivity coach and also a researcher, blogger, author, and I came to this because, many people, I think, come to reevaluate their productivity when they, face some sort of obstacle. And for me, in 2017, I developed chronic pain. And, later on around 2018, I realized I had fatigue and chronic illness. Since then, I've treated my chronic pain. It's still there. In January, I fell down the stairs and fractured my tailbone, so it came back. But and have had a good, set of doctors who've helped me to discover that I have a kind of like Borrelia that's similar to Lyme. So I have a treatment protocol, but I experienced fatigue and I couldn't sit for long periods of time, which meant I couldn't work all the time. And I am someone who had turned to work as a distraction and as a way to, have a sense of self, and, really associated my pride or my sense of worth with my work and my productivity. So in 2017, I really had to address that. And it was a very emotional experience for me to have to relinquish control of work and find other ways to, feel present and practice not, just distracting with labor. And from that, I, started listening to self-development podcasts and productivity podcasts and found great fascination and began to do personal practice which I documented on a blog, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, and found that I was just amazed both with the tools I was finding that literally were helping me to work efficiently and to work, less and to prioritize, but also that my whole conception of labor was shifting in terms of valuing, taking care of my body over just producing. And it was a huge shift. It felt like a very political shift for me as well, that once I started practicing that for myself, I really wanted to guide other people to shift their perception and, create a scaffold so that they could shift their, the way that they labored and the way that they rested. And that was, something that I did through blogging my own experience, and then eventually starting to coach other people. So I've always been passionate about making productivity more accessible, and also really kind of turning it on its head and saying it's not about just doing more and more. It's really about being intentional. And that's, I use the term slowductivity to describe the coaching and the research that I do, because it's really like productivity through the lens of mindfulness, intention, slow living, rest is incredibly important. So those are the things that I'm very passionate about, both for my own practice, but also guiding other people to institute that in their own practices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that backstory. I think I've seen in myself that sometimes, especially in my 20s, when I was so frustrated and kind of first really conceptualizing and waking up to the ways in which capitalism has had, really impacted my sense of self-worth around productivity and how I could show up as a worker and what that meant about me. And I think there was a time where I was then completely rejecting kind of any ideas or approaches around productivity because I wanted to do the exact opposite. And I really, really love and appreciate that you found this beautiful, gentle, and really curious way of guiding people to explore what it would mean to think about how we spend our time and energy kind of away from these pressures. Because I think even if we don't want to kind of extract as much productivity and labor out of our bodies, there's still a sense of kind of wanting a really, wanting to feel like we're contributing in a way that's authentic and sustainable and regenerative, and that's aligned with our values and our creativity. So I think you're speaking to something that's really important. Thank you.
Thank you. Of course.
I'm also wondering, you touched on this a little bit, and I think it's really big for us as people sometimes, and we all have our own story around that, but to be someone who's quite identified with their work and then suddenly be in an experience where that's really shifting and we can't rely on our bodies to kind of be as available as they were to show up for the work in the way that we used to. That's quite big, right? I think there's big identity shifts that come with that. And I wondered if you can speak to that a little bit more about what that's been like for you.
Sure, absolutely. I think that for me as an academic, I'm finishing my doctoral degree right now. This was a huge shock to my system in that way, because in academia, as a graduate student, or even as a, person who's I'm not, but a person who's a junior faculty or on the tenure track, there is an expectation in academia that you do your normal level of work, but then you also exceed that. And there's a sense of scarcity and there's a sense of competition. And I've participated in this myself, and I've seen colleagues and also just seen this perpetuated both by, just academia at large, that we should always be doing more and more and more. And when I could not do that, and when I, personally decided no, I will not, work until 10 p.m. No, I will not force myself to, sit or stand in a way that's painful to me. I felt like I was choosing to, not participate in the same way. And in doing that, I actually decided that I wanted to leave academia. I looked ahead and was like, oh, I don't imagine myself being able to put in the kind of labor that would be necessary to, for example, get tenure, like just literally the labor. And so making the decision to, say, these are my boundaries, even if I don't see other people practicing them or honoring them, or I see people afraid to set similar boundaries around availability or physical, presence with doing labor, or, mental or emotional labor. That was an interesting decision. And since then, I have had other academics, and many of my clients are academics as well, share with me that they appreciate that approach that I have, that is like, you should not, or you can choose, with the scaffolding you can put in place to not be participating in this, workaholic culture. So there was a big shift in my identity of myself, where I was like, I'm leaving academia, I'm starting a business where I can work from home on my own hours, if that makes sense. I don't know if you share. I mean, I know I've read your work, I've just read your recent zine that you sent out. And so I assume that you, do you share that, that experience as well, when you were shifting from the labor you were doing towards working for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I think, that's been big. I never intended to be in academia, but I have a lot of friends who are. And so thank you so much for sharing that story. That's relatable. And I think there's definitely been, moments of anxiety and rethinking so much of the ways that I was doing things when I shifted. I was working in startup companies since I was 20. So I was working full-time and studying full-time in my early 20s. I did a distance degree because I was really scared of going into debt for my studies. I was the first person in my family to go to university, and I could have had access to a loan in Germany, but I just didn't have the confidence. So I was choosing to work full-time and then studying in the evening and weekends. And that did not work, of course. And I'm so grateful every day now that I've found better ways of doing things that work for myself in the long term. But it's still also an exploration, and it's never perfect, and it has its own challenges as well, I think. But like we said before we started recording, I think especially right now, I'm so deeply grateful to be working from home really every single day and feel very lucky. Yeah.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I echo that. We were talking about how I've always wanted to exclusively work from home, and it's phenomenal to be able to get up and stretch my body, or, go get a snack or walk outside, like these things that are very nourishing for my body. Working from home has lessened my pain levels. It's very good for me, and I'm very fortunate to be able to do it right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. What has it been like for you to start a business, and do you feel like I'm especially interested, I guess, in the transition, or in the way that we unfurl almost when we begin that journey, and we look around us and see, and how could I do this? How is this different? What has surprised you in that process, or what has felt exciting or challenging?
For me, starting a business was a slow, drawn-out process because, like I said, I knew I wanted to finish my degree, and I love my research. I wanted to finish the doctoral degree. So, a few years ago, in 2017, when I was beginning my research into personal development and productivity and time management, those things, I said, if I can write this blog for a year, publish, every week on the blog, and if I can stick with it, then I will allow myself to completely shift and become a coach and an author, which my dream my entire life has always been to be an author. I think that's many people's dreams. So I just in 2017 was like, you have a year to practice, and then you continue to make blog posts. So I created a lot of content, and I was doing some coaching on the side, but didn't, until that was done, really say, okay, here I'm accepting clients, paying clients for coaching. And, even then saying well, when I finish my dissertation, then I can finally write this book I'm dreaming to write. So growing my business has been very looking a year ahead, or 2 years ahead, and saying, oh, I can't wait to get to that point. and like having these big goals that I'm very excited about, which has been really fun, but sometimes I do feel a little petulant, and I'm like, ugh, I just want to write that book now. I just want to like, have a course now. I just want to do these things now. And so it's been a good practice and patience for me, because to walk my own talk, I want to be very, prioritize certain, not just, rather, I do want to prioritize, and I do not want to be doing like 7 different things and stressing myself out. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. And I think you're speaking to so many things that are just really tempting, especially with online businesses, because everything is, in theory, immediately available and could be done right away, right? Like we could have a new course out next week, or we could self-publish a book. And yeah, we have to be really discerning and think about what the right pace for is as at any given point in time.
Absolutely. Yeah. The pacing it's been like a beautiful practice for me as well, to have something to really look forward to, and to also, have something to commit to and come back to. Like, for example, I wrote a weekly blog post every week for 2 years. And like, that was a wonderful, beautiful practice. I have so much content now. And then I decided to, shift from that to a newsletter twice a month instead. And I like that, but I'm very excited to shift to really writing, a book. So the shifts have been, a very beautiful experience as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you're describing that, because a lot of people in my audience, I think, are nervous around commitment and around changing their minds. And I think it's really important to name sometimes, especially for people that are a few years further in, maybe not just at the very beginning, that it's okay, and things still work out when you change your mind. I did very, very many things different in the beginning of my business. And I think I saw those experiments really like almost like a playing field to test the waters. And I think it's good to recognize in ourselves that we are really doing in many ways something that hasn't been around very much. It's not like the internet has been here for 80 years and it's all been done before.
Yeah.
In so many ways, it's really in its infancy still, and we're still learning about how we respond to it, what it means to have a smartphone, what it means to spend all this time on screens, and how we want to utilize that in a way that's empowering rather than depleting. And honestly, most of the time I'm still really, really unsure about these questions, but want to be in the inquiry, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Hearing you say that makes me think of how, I love working with coaches. I've worked with many coaches before, and, I love reading blogs and books and audiobooks. I love learning. It's my favorite thing, and I sometimes forget that not everyone shares that preference. Like, not everyone is like, oh, I can't wait to go and learn more about, take a course about, whatever, mailing lists, like it's interesting, like when I'm speaking with other people or with my colleagues or with you around this, how we share like a common experience in terms of like, well, you create this content, you learn these things. And, I have one of my best friends is like, I would never work with a coach. Why would I work with someone when I can teach myself? And that's something you mentioned in your zine recently, but like, why would I, like, I don't know, maybe I'm going a little off topic here, but it is often interesting for me and a smart reality check to be reminded that like, this is not, my offerings are not for everybody, even though I like totally geek out about it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and something that I've also been wondering, how sometimes I think, especially on Instagram, we're in this little echo chamber that makes us feel like we are definitely in a world where most people think the way we do, when we're really not. Like, I can totally relate to what you just said about learning. I feel the same. Like, I want to learn so many things. I'm so excited, and I love taking classes, especially if I can do it from the comfort of my home. And also, I need to be careful about my intentions with taking those classes and how much I can actually really take in. And I think on the internet, I'm pretty much surrounded by people who feel the same. But yeah, you're probably right. Not everyone has that particular priority, and that's totally fine as well.
Yeah.
I would love to know a little bit more, when you're working with people, what does that look like, and how are you helping people kind of rethink their own productivity and how it's related to their worth, and also help them kind of structure their time and make plans for what they want to do?
For me, I think that there's a few main things for this. Usually the first thing that I want to do is, or that I do is, speaking with clients is, talking about and wondering what kind of labor they're doing. And I do, I'm a very vocal supporter of valuing like invisible labors that we think like, oh, I just have to do this, and valuing labors that are, like, I don't know, doing your laundry, cooking, things that are expending like personal resources of like energy, focus, emotions, things like that. So a lot of asking clients to shift their perspective to value all of the labors that they're practicing that are not just, I'm writing an email or I'm creating a product, so that we can, in shifting that, are able to honor that there is a limited amount of energy, focus, time that people have to spend. So that's one thing that's very important to me. And that helps us to measure the kind of labor that people are spending on things differently. So that might mean, like, well, one day you don't work on your job because you have to go grocery shopping, especially right now, like when people are like it's very stressful to go grocery shopping. Like, so like that labor is so big and as important, if not more important than writing your, email or your chapter. So that's valuing labor is essential for me. And along with that, like getting really clear on what people's intentions on goals are. Because I something that breaks my heart is when people think that they're not doing well enough, or they're like not achieving their goals, when often they're not explicitly clear on what they want to do. So I often stress making actionable and achievable goals. So actionable being, what are you specifically wanting to do, in which order, breaking things into steps. And then achievable, being realistic around like, oh, I can accomplish this in an hour, or today it makes sense checking in with my body. I have the energy or spoons to do this amount of labor. So if you are approaching your work with that intention and that awareness, you can complete your tasks and say, wow, I did a really good job. I'm really proud of myself. Instead of saying, oh, I'll never accomplish this, I'm not good enough, those sort of, that negative self-talk. So having explicit, clear, reasonable goals for yourself, and, allowing yourself to accomplish those and congratulate yourself. Another thing that I really encourage is for people to take breaks. I think many people probably don't take enough breaks, and it might be because there's a feeling of scarcity, there's a feeling of like pressure, they want to accomplish things, perhaps there's like a feeling of competition, and so encouraging people to take breaks is huge. And usually I do that through teaching people the Pomodoro method. Do you use the Pomodoro method?
I don't, but I'm really curious if you want to say a few more words on that.
Sure. Yeah. This is honestly, whenever I coach people in this, it's usually the thing that people are they get the most immediate results on it, and also just love it. I love it as well. I use it all the time. So Pomodoro is a pulse and pause method. So it means that you will work intentionally for 25 minutes on a goal that you have previously set. So say for me, it might be, I'm going to revise this paragraph in 25 minutes, something reasonable. And then you set a timer and you work uninterrupted for 25 minutes. So don't check email, don't, I don't know, go fix that book that's looking weird on the bookshelf, like focus. And then a timer goes off, and then you take a 5-minute intentional break. And I really encourage clients, and try to hold myself accountable to this, to, stand up, stretch, get a drink of water, look out the window, look away from a screen, do some breathing exercises. And then you go back and do another Pomodoro, which is the 25 minutes of labor, and then 5 minutes of break. And in the traditional Pomodoro method, you would do that for 4 sets, and then you would take a longer 15 to 30-minute break. So you can shift the times however you want. Say you want to do 15 minutes of labor and 10 minutes of break, or 40 minutes of labor and 20 minutes of break. It really doesn't matter. You can shift it to what feels good for you and your body. but it allows you to focus, and it allows you to say, oh, I checked something off. So I'll often tell clients who are working on a large long-term project to measure, you'll do 4 Pomodoros today instead of, like, I'm going to finish a chapter. So you can track your progress and actually feel good about that, to say, I have accomplished my goal. It was to work for 4 intentional 25-minute sessions. So Pomodoro is, it's very helpful for helping people to focus. It's very helpful for tracking your progress. And it's helpful for making sure that you take breaks. And I recently wrote a blog post about how people can use Pomodoro to help navigate their technology use, especially like right now, people are reading the news to find out things about COVID-19. So it's like, if you're feeling drawn to technology and news, you can say 25 minutes, I don't check tech, so I use Pomodoro to, like go for, like, walk the dog. You can really use it for anything you want to focus, not be interrupted, and then take breaks.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. I will definitely check that out. And I kind of can't believe that I haven't really before, it's kind of been in the field of my vision, I guess, in some ways, but I just haven't tried it before. It does make a lot of sense. And I think it really, I think it makes working from home or just generally approaching something that is self-directed much more gentle and approachable. Yeah, that's cool.
I'm glad you like it. Yeah, there's lots of free apps. Like I use some free apps online for it. It's called Pomodoro because the person who invented it used a tomato timer, like a kitchen timer. She picked a tomato, so Pomodoro. But yeah, it's gentle, and it's a good way for people to, the thing I love most about it, just to reiterate, is that, people are valuing and saying tangibly, I have done, a thing. I have done a Pomodoro. Good enough. I'm allowed to stop working. So it can help with, putting boundaries around labor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this good enough piece is so important, right? And I think, just giving people permission to really find out what that means to them and to find their own definition. That's, I think, so important, because we really don't need any more, people or voices or stories from the outside telling us what is good enough. We can just come up with our own little pacing with the Pomodoro and be like, yeah, that's what I wanted to do, and I did it, and that's great. And yeah, it's wonderful. I wonder how you came up with the word the tending year. It feels like it's so beautifully tying everything together that you stand for and explore.
Thank you. That's kind. So the Tending Year is the name of my blog, but now it's the name of my website. And I started this because I wanted, like I said, to hold myself accountable to, practicing personal development and productivity tools for a year. And to do that, I knew that I would, write a blog post and then, like, say, for example, like mindful consumption or, time management, something like that, a theme for each week. And I would write about, something each week and then update that. So I knew I wanted to theme it. And at first I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll theme it abundance. That'll be my word for the year. And previously I had never had a word for the year, but abundance felt like a little bit too like, gotta put a smile on it. Like it felt a little too like, like what even is abundance? So instead I really liked tending, because the word tend is like, has a dual meaning. So it's both to tend to something, so to care for something like a plant or an animal or yourself, your body, and to tend to do something. So like, what are your practices, your habits? And I love the idea of what happens when we blend those things together. So I spent a year focused on my own tending practices. And after I did it for a year, I loved it. And so I was like, oh, I'm doing it again. So I did it again in my, still on the Tending Year blog, but my word for last year was garden, because I wanted to think of my life as a garden. Like, what plants in my garden of my life need more attention or more tending to, or how can I nourish different things? And that allowed me to bring more, art and music and beauty and things like that into my life. But yeah, I still love the word tending. I recently got the word tender tattooed on my right hand, so that whenever I'm writing, I see it. whenever I'm like doing anything, it's like I'm always on my hand remembering, to be tender, and
Mhm.
also to be a tender, a person who tends.
Oh my gosh, that is one of the most beautiful double meanings I've ever heard. That's so cool.
Thank
Tell
you.
us about your tattoo now. That's great. I really love how you're weaving like a sense of awe for life. As you were speaking about gardening and art and these different things, I really felt like your work is so grounded and yet so open to weaving spiritual concepts in as well. And one of your blog posts that I really loved was, wait, let me double check what it's called. How to cope with negative emotions without spiritual bypassing. I was like, yes.
Oh, yay. I'm so pleased to hear that.
That is a really beautiful one. Do you maybe want to recap just a tiny bit of it for us?
Sure. Yeah. I'm so glad you brought this up, because I'm often confused with how so many, I mean, like I just listen to so many podcasts where people are like, I don't want to get too woo with this. And I'm like, please layer on the woo. Let's get spiritual.
Yes.
So I just crave that. I'm a very spiritual person, and I weave it into my blog, and into my practice. So thinking about, to allow ourselves to cope with things without, saying spiritual bypassing. Like, we don't have to say like, well, everything happens for a reason, or, the reason that this is happening is because Mercury is in retrograde. And like, we don't have to, we are allowed to accept that we feel, we are allowed to accept that our experiences may be negative. It may not just be like this, like love and light, like we were talking about before. So we don't have to just spiritually, come up with some sort of reason for why things are happening, as a way to sort of, we can gaslight ourselves, I think, when we do that. And we can, erase the fact that there are like very real, like systemic things that are affecting people's lived experiences and material experiences. So I'm very glad that that is the blog post that you mentioned, because, not many people often do talk to me about the spiritual practice that, imbues my work and my life. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I just recommend anyone who's interested to check it out as well. We can link it in the show notes if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really great one. Um, whew, we have shared so many things and touched on, yeah, really beautiful things that I want everyone to know. There's one thing that's on my mind as well, and this could technically be a really big question, so I just want to give you permission to also keep it small and doable because oh my gosh, it's just such a wild time that we're in. But I'm wondering what you're wishing for us as a collective or community of small business owners. And I think I just want to be clear that I'm not asking this in the direction of this pandemic has happened for a reason and it's going to change the way we all work. And this is the time to figure out exactly and have a vision for what that's going to look like, because I think that's just impossible. But I just wonder kind of what you're wishing for at the moment and what feels good and exciting, and what would you like people that are maybe interested in starting a business or they're just at the beginning to know more about?
Sure. That's a beautiful question. It is big, but it's a good question that I'm glad to be thinking about. I think that the first thing that comes to my mind is thinking of like prioritizing care for ourselves and care for others, care for our community, and prioritizing our, just like, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual sense of grounding. So honoring that, and along with that, like respecting and celebrating people's boundaries around their labor. So like, I would be thrilled to see other, small business owners like being, very clear around like, this is what I'm able to do. This is, what I'm in need of. Like, can people help to support me right now? I think that sounds very important. And like, valuing, I guess, yeah, like valuing the labor that we are doing right now. And I think even more than just like valuing my own labor, because I feel like with my productivity practices, like I'm very well researched in this stuff. I know how to set boundaries around my own labor and output, but like encouraging other folks to do that as well, to like value, like you're doing emotional labor as well as, like trying to figure out if you want to even be selling things right now, like honoring the fact that that is an emotional process. I just released a new coaching offering, and it was a big, like I spent weeks thinking about what to price it, like just thinking about like, how do we even, sell right now? Whereas at the same time, I'm like, all of my friends, I want you to sell your things because I want you to have money, because I want you to, feel sustained. So it's honoring that we are, emotionally and, mentally, spiritually laboring right now. And just prioritizing care for ourselves and one another right now. It's very messy. It's very sensitive. I would love if I could hold space for, my friends and colleagues and allow them to have a full experience and feel comfortable doing that with me.
Wow, that's really such a beautiful way of describing it. I feel like those are things that I've been lingering with, if that's an expression, but I haven't been able to express it in that way, especially the piece around it really being messy and sensitive and holding space or supporting people in being in the full experience of it, and acknowledging all these different kinds of labor that are associated just with being alive in these times, let alone adding things to that, like launching something or, creating something new. It is really big. Yeah, you're totally right. And I'm so glad that you're talking about that.
Thank you. And I think like the one thing I want to add too is like,
Mm-hmm.
I recently had a newsletter. My newsletter is called The Tending Letter. And I recently had a tending letter about how, sharing with my readers about how the first couple, or like the first week I spent at home, I just sort of like reverted back to workaholic tendencies and was just hiding in work because I did not know how to cope with and control the fact that things were just so frightening right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so acknowledging that we may feel, a desire to turn towards our work as a coping mechanism. And while everyone should use whatever coping mechanism is, safe and works for them right now, like no judgment with that. But like encouraging us to think critically about our relationship to our labor right now and to our work right now, because I could see, and I know personally for me, like that was one of the first things that I did as a coping mechanism, was like, I need to work. And I sort of regressed back into, where I was, where I have been before, where work was just a way to numb out. So that's something to also think about, as well as I would want people to practice. Like for me, I'm like, no, you're not going to work. I'm taking an intro to classical music class, like go take your classical music class, or go, like I just got watercolors, go do watercolors, or, like go garden. So like recognizing our relationship with our labor right now. And it's hard. I want to compassionately witness that this is difficult for many people. And that everyone's experience is different. I'm able to work from home right now. My partner has a job, like everyone's experiences are different. I want to give everybody a hug and just hold space for them to share how they feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yes. And also for everyone to really have choices around this. Like there's just so many people out there in precarious working situations on 0-hour contracts or, and it just really, my heart breaks for so many people that are really in deep crisis and panic right now and don't even have the option to think about those things. It makes me feel really passionate about a universal basic income, and I really hope that that's something that maybe will be drawn more into focus as we move through this. But yeah, also to mirror back, I totally relate to that. I've also had moments in the beginning where I just kind of was hiding in work, like you were saying, really tried to stay on top of things. And it's still like this weird dance of going in and out, of holding things pretty loosely and showing up for things that feel good right now. Like this conversation, I've been really looking forward to and still really wanted to do it because they're so often really nourishing. This one really is. And it feels good to stay connected to the creative process in some way, I think. And at the same time, I've really been noticing that I'm sleeping like crazy at the moment, just to process all that's happening. And I feel often that I'm napping and I wake up even more tired than when I fell asleep. And it just almost feels like the rest is never enough. Um, so yeah, that's really real, isn't it?
Yeah, I witnessed that. I've been sleeping a lot more as well. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, wow.
Yeah. Mm. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we close?
I don't know. I'm very pleased that in this conversation, we've been able to talk about productivity, not just in terms of, like output and tools, which are wonderful and helpful, but really in terms of, presence and, intentionality and slowing down. That's been very nice. That's a very important part of my work as a coach and researcher. So it's been nice to chat about that.
Hmm. I really, really love talking to you too. There's been so many beautiful nuggets that I'm really excited to share, and that I think also I will sit with more myself. Yeah, because it's like a really continuous, ongoing journey of taking it in and implementing, and then I like thinking of it as this spiral journey where there's an expression called, I think it's called next level, next devil, something like that.
Cool.
Yeah, it's just about, like encountering a concept once, but then in times like these or in different circumstances at a different time in our lives, really needing the same concept and challenge again and grounding deeper into these practices feels really great. So thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared. And I would love to point people your way as well. Can you let us know what you're currently offering and where people can find you?
Sure, thank you. So right now I've got 2 coaching offerings. So the first, this is a thing I've been doing for a while. It's success and accountability coaching, and that I only take around 4 to 5 clients a month on that. But it's a developed coaching experience where I have sessions and then follow up with and help my clients to stay accountable to deadlines and goals that we come up with together. And the second thing I'm offering, which I just recently released, is single session slowductivity coaching. So this is a hour-long one-on-one virtual coaching session that we'll have where we meet, we work on 1 to 2 things, and then at the end of our session, you go off and continue working on those on your own. So that one's at a lower price point. So you can find me at thetendingyear.com. Also, my Instagram is the tending year. I have a Facebook. I post on Instagram, pretty regularly, but I also have a mailing list where I send out a newsletter every 2 weeks. So I really like the newsletters. They're a little different from the blogs in that they're a little bit more personal, and I'm sharing, stories and, things that I'm reading, practices I'm doing. Yeah, so newsletter, coaching, blog,
Hmm.
social media.
Hmm. Thank you so much. And we'll link to that in the show notes as well. So if people didn't catch it, then it will definitely all be there. Thank you so, so much. It was really beautiful to talk
Thank
to you.
you. This is such a beautiful part of my day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.